Good morning. Atheists, agnostics, skeptics, free thinkers, our friends and allies, and anyone who is merely curious, you are welcome here. At Seattle Atheist Church, we call ourselves an atheist church because you will never hear anything supernatural talked about from the podium. We are founded on the principles of scientific naturalism and secular ethics. So today, what I'm going to be giving a talk on this book, The Philosophy of Albert Einstein. And the way it works here is that everyone is invited to give a talk as long as it doesn't cover anything supernatural. And so just see either myself or Josh or Jack if you're interested in giving a talk. So today's talk is about Albert Einstein. All right, so he was born in 1879, and he won a Nobel Prize in 1921 at the age of 42. He was Jewish, and he was vacationing in the United States when Adolf Hitler came to power, and so he decided to stay in the United States. He was a lifelong pacifist, but he did tell Franklin Roosevelt that Germany had the technology to develop really powerful bombs, and so this was the beginning of the Manhattan Project. In 1955, Albert Einstein, along with Bertrand Russell and 9 other intellectuals who were scientists or philosophers at the time, who had a goal to end militarism in general and to ban nuclear weapons in particular, they all got together and they created what eventually became known as the Einstein Manifesto, which we'll talk about that a little bit. And then Albert Einstein died in 1955. So a lot of people know him as a scientist, but they don't know him as a peace activist. And what I want to do is all this book is mostly a collection of quotes by Albert Einstein, and he was extremely eloquent. So I would like to just let his words speak for themselves with the very minimum commentary, and then we can talk about it afterwards. So Einstein was not an atheist. But he found reason, with a capital R, in the laws of nature, and for him, that was evidence of God. Now, he did live in a pre-quantum mechanics world, but I don't know that that would have made much of a difference to him. He said he believed in Spinozas God, which revealed itself in harmony of nature, but a God who did not concern himself with man. And at times he calls himself an agnostic, but for sure his view did not include a supernatural idea of God. So in keeping with our sort of foundation of we don't believe in anything supernatural and we believe in scientific naturalism, I think that his writing is very appropriate study for those of us in this church. So here are some things that I picked out, and I'm going to just kind of read them slowly, give us a couple beats to let it marinate, and then maybe do a little commentary and move on to the next quote. This is what he had to say about cosmic religion. The most beautiful and profound emotion we can experience is the sensation of the mystical. It is the sower of all true science. He to whom this emotion is a stranger, who can no longer wonder and stand wrapped in awe, is as good as dead. To know what is impenetrable to us really exists, manifesting itself as the highest wisdom and the most radiant beauty, which our dull faculties can comprehend only in their most primitive form. This knowledge, this feeling, is the center of true religiousness. So when people say that atheism can't be a religion, I would say that this is completely compatible with having a scientific naturalism view of the universe. A human being is a part of the whole, called by us the universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of consciousness. The delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and affection for a few people nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. On the meaning of life. What is the meaning of human life, or organic life altogether? To answer this question implies a religion. Is there any sense, then, you ask, in putting it? I answer, the man who regards his own life and that of his fellow creatures as meaningless is merely unfortunate and almost disqualified for life. The life of the individual has meaning only insofar as it aids in making the life of everything living nobler and more beautiful. Life is sacred. That is to say, it is the supreme value to which all other values are subordinate. So one of the talks that we had earlier was a talk on Sam Harris' book, Waking Up. And he talks about that maybe what we should talk about instead of right and wrong is we should talk about everything in terms of, does it contribute to the well-being of other human beings? And so, though that's not an official position of the Seattle Atheist Church, it is something that we've been discussing here, and it seems in keeping with Einstein's point of view. This is what he had to say on mysticism. The mystical trend of our time, which shows itself particularly in the rampant growth of so-called spiritualism, is for me no more than a symptom of weakness and confusion. Since our inner experiences consist of reproductions and combinations of sensory impressions, the concept of a soul without a body seems to be empty and devoid of meaning. So, at one point we were trying to really codify, because we do want Seattle Atheist Church to have the same status as any other church. And so we were trying to codify what is it that we believe. And one thing is that the mind and the mind is merely a part of the body, and we toyed with the idea of spirit or soul is really just mind. And so we did not come up with anything, which was an official position of the Seattle Atheist Church, but if you are here and you're interested in that kind of philosophical thinking, you might want to be part of it. And it seems to be just this core idea that there is no soul separate from the body. I do not believe in immortality of the individual, and I consider ethics to be an exclusively human concern, with no supernatural authority behind it. I have never imputed to nature a purpose or goal, or anything that could be understood to be anthropomorphic. What I see in nature is a magnificent structure that we can comprehend only imperfectly, and that must fill a thinking person with a feeling of humility. This is a genuinely religious feeling that has nothing to do with mysticism. So one of the talks that we had to do with awe, and so one of the people in the church gave a talk about some events in the history of the world which were truly awe-inspiring. And I think that it's this same feeling of humility, of smallness in the face of the largeness, which is, you know, the entire universe. And Einstein is saying that is a genuinely religious feeling. Here's what he had to say about religion. Feeling and longing are the motive force behind all human endeavor and human creation, in however exalted a guise the latter may present themselves to us. Now, what are the feelings and needs that have led men to religious thought and belief in the widest sense of the words? A little consideration will suffice to show that most varying emotions preside over the birth of religious thought and experience. With primitive man, above all, it is fear that evokes religious notions. The fear of hunger, wild beasts, sickness, and death. Since at this stage of existence, understanding of causal connections is poorly developed, the human mind creates illusory beings more or less analogous to itself, on whose wills and actions these fearful happenings depend. Thus, one tries to secure the favor of these beings by carrying out actions and offering sacrifices, which, according to the tradition handed down from generation to generation, propitiate them or make them well disposed toward a mortal. In this sense, I am speaking of the religion of fear. But the social impulses are another source of the crystallization of religion. Fathers and mothers and leaders of large human communities are mortal and fallible. The desire for guidance and love and support prompts men to form social or moral conceptions of God. This is the God of providence, who protects, disposes, rewards, and punishes. The God who, according to the believer's outlook, loves and cherishes the lives of the tribe or the human race, or even life itself, the comforter in sorrow and unsatisfied longing, who preserves the souls of the dead. This is the social or moral conception of God. The truth is that all religions are really a blend of both types, with this differentiation, that on the higher levels of social life, the religion of morality predominates. Common to all these types is the anthropomorphic character of their conception of God. In general, only individuals of exceptional endowments and exceptionally high-minded communities rise to any considerable extent above this level. But there is a third stage of religious experience which belongs to all men, even though it is rarely found in a pure form. I shall call it cosmic religious feeling. It is very difficult to elucidate this feeling to anyone who is entirely without it, especially since there is no anthropomorphic conception of God corresponding to it. And speaking personally for myself, I passed through liberal Christianity. I used to go to Science of Mind Church, where one of the central tenets is there is no contradiction between the laws of nature and the mind of God. But at some point what I did was I just dropped the mind of God part, which is nature is awe-inspiring. Nature is awe-inspiring, and there is a depth of love available to humanity that man can have for man, that simply we don't need to bring in, for me, we don't need to bring in God as a causal agent in that. So when this seems relevant to me because obviously as an atheist who belongs to an atheist church, I get asked a lot like, well, what do you believe? And so these are the beliefs of Einstein, who was not an atheist, but I think they are in keeping with scientific naturalism and the development of secular ethics. And so I wish that I could write as beautifully as Einstein, and then all of my sermons would be so beautiful. And he, as far as his secular ethics go, what I wish that children were taught in school about Einstein, the peace activist. And we never hear about his work on peace activism. I'm going to read a few quotes I'm going to read some excerpts from the Einstein Manifesto of Peace. Now remember, there were 11 scientists who signed this. We are speaking on this occasion not as members of this or that nation, continent, or creed, but as human beings, members of the species man, whose continued existence is in doubt. Almost everyone who is politically conscious has strong feelings about one or more issues. But we want you, if you can, to set aside such feelings and consider yourselves only as members of a biological species which has had a remarkable history and whose disappearance no one can desire. The general public, and even many men in positions of authority, have not realized what would be involved in a war with nuclear bombs. The general public still thinks in terms of the obliteration of cities. And no doubt in an H-bomb war, great cities would be obliterated. But this is a minor disaster that would have to be faced. If everybody in London, New York, and Moscow were exterminated, the world, in a course of a few centuries, would recover from the blow. But we now know, especially since the Bikini test, that nuclear bombs can gradually disperse destruction over a very much wider area than had been previously supposed. It is stated on very good authority that a bomb can now be manufactured which will be 2,500 times as powerful as that which destroyed Hiroshima. Here then is the problem which we present to you, stark and dreadful and inescapable. Shall we put an end to the human race, or shall mankind renounce war? We appeal as human beings to human beings. Remember your humanity and forget the rest. And so this is what some from this beautiful book that I highly recommend to you. And if you would join me now, I'd like us to get into the concentric circles and discuss whatever thoughts anyone might have. Thank you.